In our previous video, we examined some of the aggregate functions, and in the process, we witnessed that the sum function returned us with the total duration of all the tracks within the track table. So it returned us the total duration of all the tracks within this table. And just to have a bit of recap, I will run this statement again just to show you. And this value basically highlights the total duration of all the tracks within this track table. So let me get back to this track table again. So now we have all the rows, and what we can see is that we have the name of the track, but in the third column we have an album ID, and that basically, so we don't have the full album details. We don't know the name of the album, but we definitely do know the ID of the album, and we can see a clear association. So the first track belongs to album ID 1. The second track belongs to album ID 2. The third track belongs to album ID 3. And the track with the track ID 7 belongs to album ID 1. The track with track ID 8 belongs to album ID 8. So we can clearly see that there's an association between tracks and albums, and we don't have the full album name, but we know that there are certain albums. Now in this video, I would like to achieve something slightly different, and I would like to know the total duration of each of these albums. Uh, so we are not interested in the total duration of all the tracks. We are not interested in total duration of one of the tracks. Rather, we want to have a different kind of grouping. We want to group similar kind of albums together, and then we want to use the sum function in the same way in which we have used the sum function in the previous video, but we want to apply it on a different grouping level, you can say, or we want to apply it on the level of albums. So now, because I have to achieve this task, and I have to carry out this grouping, I can modify this statement using a group by clause. So I can modify this statement, and because I want to group them by albums or album IDs, precisely speaking, I can say group by album ID, and now this clause will return us the results, but it will group by album IDs, and then it will basically add up the values inside the milliseconds column for each of the albums. So let me, before executing this statement, let me specify album ID over here, and this would help us identifying that the total duration belongs to which album exactly. So the best way to explain this is to execute it. So if we execute, we can see that album ID 261 duration is specified in the first row. This is album ID 23, and this is the duration in milliseconds for album ID 23. Now it's a bit harder for us to understand. Let me just order it by, we've seen order by previously. Let me order it by album ID as well, and this would show the results in an ascending order of album IDs. And now we can see album ID 1, 2, 3, and in the corresponding column we can see the associated durations of each of those columns. Now, if you see, we have the first column named as album ID, but the second column doesn't have any specific names because the second column is comprised of this sum function. So in SQL, we can also provide some alias to a column. So we can use as, and then we can provide the alias name. So we can say duration and in milliseconds, let's say, or I don't know, let's say just duration for now. So if you do that, then we will see a name on top of the second column. So now we can see that this is these are the album IDs and these are the associated duration in milliseconds. So you can use alias just for presentation purposes. Now another detail, the final detail which I would like to tell you, which is an important one, is that whenever you are grouping by a column or a combination of columns, you can do a grouping or based on a combination of columns as well. But whenever you are grouping by a specific column, in your select statement, you can only mention that column. I don't know, you can't have name, you can't specify name column in the select statement. Whenever you are grouping by a specific column in the select statement, you can only specify that column. Any other details can come inside any of the aggregate functions like sum or average or min or max, but apart from the column name, which is also the basis of your grouping, and the aggregate function, you cannot specify any other column. So this thing is not legitimate. Let me just try to run it again just to show that SQL Server will throw an error at this stage, and it says column track.name is invalid in the select because it is not contained in either an aggregate function or the group by clause. So you cannot specify any of any of the other columns in the track table, which are either not part of this aggregate function or not the basis of your grouping. So if I remove it again, just try to execute it once more, and here you can see the results again.